Hey guys, hi everyone, good morning. Hi Sharath, hi Samita, good morning everyone. I hope I'm audible. Good morning Karthik, good morning everyone. Hello guys, hi everyone. I think I should be audible as well as visible, right? Am I? Good morning Manmohan, good morning. Good morning Pradnya, good morning. Good morning Shubham, good morning everyone. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So we will wait 1 or 2 minutes for rest of the people to join, and then accordingly we are going to start our JavaScript class. Today will be the last class of our DOM. Okay, and it is one of the very important class. Why? Because most of the interview questions related to DOM are actually asked from a domain which we will discuss in today's class. So please make sure that you stay up till end. You do not leave the class in between. Although I can see only 10 people have joined, not more than that, which is definitely very small number. So we will wait 1 or 2 minutes for rest of the people to join, and then accordingly we are going to start our class. In the meantime, please, if possible, please put a message in our WhatsApp group. Ask your friends to join as soon as they can. So let me try to set up the environment in the meantime. So we are currently in JavaScript, we are currently in DOM, and we have already discussed a lot of topics, lot of things related to DOM. We have taken almost, I would say, 4 classes, 2 classes, that is 4 hours of DOM, and we have understood most of the things that are there to understand related to DOM. Today's class is important. Why? Because we are going to discuss our DOM events. We are going to discuss about event listeners. We are going to discuss about event delegation. We are going to discuss about capturing, bubbling, and a lot of other things as well. So this is something that's very important related to interviews, related to DOM, related to web development. So let's make sure that we all stay here up till end and we watch the entire session. Let me put a message in the WhatsApp group so that I will ask others to join, and then we will start. Basu is asking, sir, please have one Gmeet session. Honestly speaking, Basu, I am trying my best to find my time in weekdays. Okay, this week I'm not available any day, but definitely next week it's a promise from my side that I will be there. We will take Google Meet session in our next week. Okay, that's a promise from my side. We will have one class of 1 hour or 2 hours where all the doubts will be resolved and everything that you're trying to ask, we will do that. Right? I have taught IIFE, I have taught them in functions. Please check that video. Okay. So I think you no, I have taught them. Okay. So shall we start, guys? Although I can see only 18 people here, that is definitely very small number, but I guess we can start our class. Shall we start? Shall we start? Please share this YouTube link with your friends and ask them to join. Please do that in your WhatsApp, wherever you can, so that I can see good number of students here. I can see only 15 people here, which is definitely not the number that I'm looking for. So I think we have to put one another filter. We filtered 104 students in our previous discussion when this happened, something like this. Now I think we have to filter about 60 students only. That's something that we need to do now, I guess. Perfect. I guess we can start our class. See, in our previous classes, we have discussed, first of all, how and what DOM is, how it works in the browser. We have discussed different types of selectors, how we can select an element. We have discussed different types of selectors, whether we talk about get element by ID, get element by class name. We have discussed, first element child, last element child, children's, next sibling, previous sibling. We have discussed a lot of things in our DOM, and most of them have been related to how we can implement dynamicality in our website, right? So it has all been about when we go to an element, we have to find that element and then bring this change inside that element. That's what our previous two discussions related to DOM have been. But in today's class, there's going to be a different discussion. It won't be about the implementation of dynamicalities. We won't change the content. We won't do XYZ things, but it will be related to complete different discussion that we need to have. So let me create a file with the name of event1.html. See, we already know what dynamicality is, right? Don't we? Yes, sir, we do. Whenever we say dynamicality, we always say the dynamicality on a web page is simply whenever we go on a web page and perform an action. So if as a user am able to perform an action on a web page and reply to that action, something is happening in my web application. In that case, we say it is actually a dynamic web page. In our previous classes, we have seen one of the actions that we can say, which is on click. We have seen only one thing, that's on click. Good morning, AK. Good morning, shorts video. That's what we have seen, nothing else. Have we seen any other action being performed on our web application? I would say no. But whenever we go to a web application, any type of web application, whenever I create a web application, do you think on a website and only there's only one possibility of action a user can perform, which is click? Absolutely not. There are a lot of other applications on which we can train our website, and whenever such actions happen, we can ask our website to behave accordingly. Now, we all know an action on a website can be performed in multiple ways. Let me give an example. We talk about this input device called as mouse. We know when I click on a particular element, it is an action. When I double click on a particular element, it's an action. When I move my cursor over there of my mouse, it is an action. So when we talk about this specific input device, which is mouse, it is not just a click that is going to be an action that a user can perform on a web application, but there are a lot of other types of actions a user can perform as well, like double click, like mouse leave, mouse enter, mouse move, so on and so forth, right? Similarly, when I am on a web page, this keyboard can also be helpful to perform actions. I can press a key, I can leave a key, right? When we talk about a window, when we talk about window, I can resize my window. I can resize my window. I can reload my web page. So it means on a website, an action can be performed in multiple ways. It's not just by simple on click, and that's what our initial discussion is going to be. We will understand what different types of actions a user can perform on a particular web page. For that, there's a topic called as DOM events. What's the topic? DOM event. Remember, in the document object model, events represent various actions that happen within a browser or a web page, like such as clicking, submitting forms, typing, or hovering over elements. And with help of these events, event allow websites to now become interactive. So it's quite obvious when we try to allow multiple actions on a web page, we can train our website in a way so that my website will interact with those actions. So whenever we talk about these events, events allow our websites to become interactive, responding to user input or creating a dynamic user experience that we want. And in this session, we are going to learn how to not just perform, but also how to detect as well. What are the different ways and how we can handle them in JavaScript. Let's start our discussion by understanding what are the different types of DOM events. Although I can see 20 students here, which is definitely very small number. From past 2 days, number has been decreased by 30. Last class, it was about 47, 48, 50 students here. And today it's only 20 students. So if I see only 20 students up till end, I'm not going to take tomorrow's class. That's for sure. So let's talk about types of DOM events. What do we mean by types of DOM events? There are mouse events, keyboard events, we have form events, we have window events, 4 types of events. Whenever we talk about types of DOM events, it means what is that particular type with help of which you can perform an event. Number one is mouse. As of now, let me try to go over it. Let me try to create simply a button, and that button will have an ID BTN. Okay. And on this button, I know I can simply add an on click event. I will simply go at on click, And on this on click, what it is going to do, it's simply going to give me an alert, and while it will simply say hello students, something like this. And let me try to go live with this. So let me open this and refresh it, and let me try to go live. Okay, and if I try to divide my screen into two parts, we can clearly see we have our button in the output, right? And let me try to drag it a little bit right over here, and let me add some text. So I will simply say click. Now see, at this point of time, the type of event that I have on my button is on click. What does it mean? It simply means when I click on it, it's going to perform the action, and you can clearly see hello students in the output. But my question is, do we have with respect to mouse only a click? No, there can be XYZ things. Instead of on click, and please note them down as well, we have one another type of event called as DB click. What do we have? We have DB click, double click, like this. What do we mean by DBL double click over here? Okay, although always remember one thing, whenever you add events in a element as an attribute, you must write on in front of it. So unless and until you do not write on in front of it, it's not going to be treated as an event. So in attribute, the events must be having a prefix on. There is some other way as well with help of which we can add events, where we will write event only. Remember, this is an event. The text which I have highlighted, this portion is event. On is a prefix which we add whenever it is this event is being added on an element as an attribute. So now see, when I single click on it, nothing is happening. When I single click on it, nothing is happening. But as soon as I double click on it, you can clearly see my web application is responding to me. Now you will say, sir, okay, I understood this, that on double click it's giving me an alert. But what is the point of all these events? Instead of alert, can't we simply write a JavaScript function like this, and then later on go over and implement script, and inside this script I can simply define a function called as fun, like this, and I can perform anything whatever I want to do. I can simply tell it inside this function, select that element, change its class name, add style, remove style, whatever I want to do, I can do that. So it is simply, rest of the things are going to be same, because it's not about what we want to do, it's about what is going to trigger it. So at this point of time, it's double click that's going to trigger it. I hope it makes sense. So let me try to Control C, Control V it, and let me try to comment this code. What is the other event which we can use using mouse? Another one is called on mouse down. The event name is mouse down. On mouse down is the attribute name. This function that I have written in front of it, it means that this function will be called, it's called function handler. This function will be called, it will be triggered when the user, when the mouse button is pressed down on an element. You can see at this point of time, when I say on mouse down, when I press down on it, actually it is triggered. So this is on mouse down. There's some other events as well, like mouse move, which is a very important, mouse enter, which is a very important event. So I have on mouse enter over there. What does it mean? Let's try to understand it. So if I refresh my page over here, see what on mouse move mean. Mouse enter means, sorry, as soon as my cursor enters the boundaries of an element. So I'm not clicking anything, but as soon as my mouse enters the boundaries of an element, it is triggered. That's what on mouse enter means. As soon as my mouse pointer, the pointer that I have for that mouse, it enters the boundaries of that element, it's going to trigger it. This is what we mean by on mouse enter. In a similar way, Control C, Control V, let me try to comment this. There's also one another event called as on mouse leave over here. What does on mouse leave mean? It will be triggered when the mouse pointer leaves the boundaries of an element. You can clearly see as soon as I put on this, nothing is happening. Double click, nothing is happening. But as soon as my pointer is going to leave the boundaries of this element, the function will be called and it will be triggered. So it's an action. Is it an action? Is it an event? Of course, yes. It is an event that we have. So there are similarly lot of events with respect to mouse. Double click, mouse down, mouse up, mouse enter, mouse move, single click. So whatever you can think of, it is related to mouse. There is going to be an event for it. I hope it makes sense. With this, we are going to close our mouse events discussion, because as I said, it's not about implementing a change. It's not about that. It is actually about events. What are the different ways of performing an event? So at this point of time, I am writing on mouse leave. Let me create a new file called as event2.html. Okay, in this we are going to discuss one another type of events, and those are called keyboard events. Now you guys, I have a simple question for all of you. When we talk about keyboard events, it simply means pressing a key or leaving a key. It means key down or key up. Now, what is that HTML element over here in our website? What is our HTML element in our website that actually allows us to use keyboard in it? Quickly tell me. What is that HTML element that allows me to write something with help of my keyboard? We all know the answer to that, and it is called forms, input fields actually. So we have input fields that ask us to actually enter something. And whenever we have such input fields, whenever we can give an input using this keyboard, at that point of time, we must understand we can actually have two sets, two events over there related to keyboard. One is called key down, one is called key up. Let's try to figure out all of those. So I will simply go create an input field with an ID called as input itself. Okay. So type is equals text, ID is equals to input, something like this. Very good. After that, I will, let's suppose, create a p tag. Okay. So for this p tag is going to be, let's say, it's going to have simply para as an ID. Okay. So what I want is I simply want one thing, which is when I click on this input field, let me try to open the file in the output. So if I go input event2.html, open this, you can clearly see there should be an input field, and we can see that here, right? Let me try to zoom it out. Perfect. Pay attention, pay close attention. This is what I want. I simply want to add an event over there on an input field. Okay. Then whatever that events are, whatever that text inside the input field is, I want it to be placed in a p tag. But before I do that, there's one another concept that we have to understand, because uh, there are two ways of adding an event on a particular input field. See, when I talk about this input field, if I have to add an event, I will simply go right on key down like this. And on key down, simply give me whatever you want to give me, it's going to do that. So I can simply add a attribute over here and call my JavaScript in these double quotes, it's going to work. But now I'm not going to add an event like this. There's a concept inside our DOM, which is a method that can be implemented on an element with help of which we can add events to it. It's called add event listener. We know that, and remember, this is what the syntax of add event listener is. One of the very important methods we have inside our DOM. Very important methods. And you will be using it 100% times. You won't be adding events like on click on. You will be, but in most of the cases, you will be using a method called as add event listener. Now, this is also one of the very important methods related to interviews as well. Okay. The syntax is we will select an element using our DOM methods, whether we talk about query selector, get element by ID, or any type of method, we will use that. So element dot, on that I will use a method called as add event listener. Add event listener. Now it receives how many arguments? If you already know JavaScript, tell me. It does not receive two arguments, it actually receives three arguments. Always remember that. Number one is the event name. First argument is the event name that you're trying to perform on that element. And also remember one point, which is that when we talk about event name, it is going to be without prefix on. Without prefix on. We will not have on over here. So it means if I want to add a click event on an element, I will write click here, not on click. If I want to add mouse move, I will add mouse move over here, not on mouse move. Second thing is the function that we want to call. Okay. Function that we want to execute whenever this event will be triggered, whenever this action will be performed. That's the second argument. Third argument over this called capturing phase. What is the third argument? It's called capturing or bubbling phase. And this capturing or bubbling is nothing but actually a Boolean value. It can be either true or false. So we will see later on what true and false means. What true will do, what false will do. That will be the for later discussion. Good Codes for Life is asking for WhatsApp link. Please remind me at the end of today's session. Definitely at that point of time, I will share the WhatsApp link to you. Okay, don't worry about it. So, on an element, in order to add an event, it's not necessary I will use on click or on mouse move or on key down or on blur, all those events as an attribute, but we can use a method as well with the help of which we can call as add event listener. Similarly, on my element over there, let's suppose there's already an event which is registered. Now I want to remove that. I can simply implement a method called as remove listener over there. So if we use remove listener method, we just have to pass the event name and it's going to remove that. But remove event listener, we will talk about that later on. As of now, we have to focus on this. See, for this particular element input field, I want to add a event which is called on key down. Okay. As I told you, the first and the most easiest way is we will simply go write on key down here, but I won't do that. I will simply write my JavaScript. The intention of using script on add event listener is simply we do not want to rely on HTML. We simply want to rely on pure JavaScript. That's it. And also, there's one another very important thing which is called third argument, which is the advantage of add event listener, capturing and bubbling. We will come to that later on. At this point of time, I've simply created a variable called as input, and I've simply got an element whose ID is input. So can I say at this point of time, inside this input variable, I have this input field? Of course, yes, I can say that. Very good. Moving forward. In a similar way, I will also create a variable called as para. Now, this para is nothing but actually in my document, I will simply get an element by ID, and that ID is para actually like this. Very good. Which means I have received both of these two elements in two variables. After that, I will simply tell it on my input field, please add an event listener. And on that event listener, I know it's going to receive three arguments, but I will use only two arguments. As of now, the event that I'm going to use is called key down. Now, what is this key down? Key down is an event which will be triggered on that input field or on that element which receives input using keyboard whenever a key is pressed. So if key is pressed, event will be triggered. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Simple event over there. And second thing is I will simply put a event handler to it. So let me call a function, and this function is simply going to supposedly, let's suppose it's going to, as of now, console.log. What is it going to console? It's going to console as simple as that, nothing else. Later on, I will change the elements, whatever we have. Okay. Now, if I go inside my inspect field and if I try to open my console like this, you should see in my input field, if I write A. Now, when I wrote A over here, it actually executed and triggered the event. So if I write D over here, as soon as I write D, Adfer is being consoled. So whenever key is pressed, at that point of time, you can clearly see, as long as key is being pressed over there, you can clearly see my events are being triggered. So it's a simple, straightforward event, key down. As soon as my key is being pressed, it is going to trigger the event continuously. That's a very simple, straightforward answer. But what is it that we actually want? Okay, what is it that we actually want? Now, here is something very much important before we discuss how to put an element inside this p tag, how to put the content inside this p tag. There's one very important discussion that we need to do, which usually no one does. And even when I teach in normal classes, I don't do the discussion, but over here I'm going to do it. Why? Because it's important. Whenever, every time, note this down. Okay, every time whenever an event is triggered, doesn't matter what the event is, whether it's a click, whether it's a mouse move, whether it's a key down, whether it's any type of event, whenever event is triggered, around that particular triggering, an event object is created. Always remember that. With respect to this key down, to this function, we can pass an argument over there called as event. And the event object that I'm talking about, it is being created. It's nothing but it is an argument which can be passed to an event handler. Remember, this is called event. This is called event handler. This function is called event handler. So every time an event is triggered, an object is created and passed to the event handler. Now, what does this object contain? That's something that you need to understand. What does this object contain that I am talking about? This object contains information, a very valuable information. And trust me, if you are going to become a web developer, you have to deal with events no matter what. That's how strong and how powerful this object is, which is being created whenever any event is triggered. The object that will be passed to this function called as event as an argument, it's a very strong and it contains valuable information like about the event, such as the target element, from which element the event was triggered, such as the type of event, what is the type of event that is being triggered, and many more properties that we can have, like target, like type. And there are a lot of other things as well which we can implement using the same event. The same event has some properties as well associated to it. So let's see a simple example of this. Let's try to understand a very simple thing. As of now, let me go here. Let me create one of the files called as event object dot html. I will get back to the events too in a 2 second time over there. Okay. See, I will simply go here and I will simply create, let's suppose, a button. Okay. On which I'm going to simply write an ID called as btn. Okay. And this is how this button looks like. And it simply says, click me. Done. After that, for this button, I'm going to simply add an event listener there. So let me simply go tell it, inside my document, please get an document. What's happening? Okay, document dot get element by ID, and that ID is going to be BT. And on this particular thing, please add an event listener. I can add an event listener like this as well. It's not necessary I will put it in a variable first and then add an event listener. No, I know this much is going to return my BTN button element, button tag, right? So I can directly add an event listener like this. Or if you want to make it more readable, it is better. What we can do is we can simply store it in a variable. So where BTN is equals to like this. After that, I will simply do BTN dot add event listener. On this button element, which you have selected on line number 11, please add an event listener so that it can listen to an event immediately. What is that event that we want? Simply anything. Let's suppose click. Doesn't matter what event you add, because that's not the point. The point is to understand what event object is. After that, I will simply define a function like this, like this, like this, like this. Okay. And inside this particular thing, it's going to do something. But what am I talking about? I am talking about the object that gets associated around this function and called as event like this. Okay, what does this event actually mean? Allow me a second. Okay, what does this event actually mean? Let's console it. Let's see what it's going to print in the output. So if I simply go console this event, okay, and let's see what information it contains, what are the XYZ things it holds. Let's see that. So I will open up the console. And let me try to open my event object file in the output. So event object.html. Now let me click. Now when I click on this, it gives me an object called as pointer event. What does it give me? It gives me an object called as pointer event, and there are a lot of properties that we have associated with it, like alt key, and there are a lot of properties which we do not even care about, which we do not even use. But there's one very important property which is called target. If you look at this target, it itself is something called as object which contains its own key value ps, which is the element itself. So my point that I'm trying to make you understand is that whenever you perform an event, it is not just about what this event is going to do, but also it's about from where this event is being triggered and what other information it contains with it. Like at that point of time, what was the client X, client Y of that particular element, which means the location X coordinates, Y coordinates of it. So we can clearly see a lot of other properties. Even I myself don't know what other, few of the properties we have, because we don't use that many properties from this. What is the type of event? It's click over there. So that's what we need to understand, that this is an event object which gets wrapped up. So every single time, whenever an event is triggered over there, this event object is created. which will be passed to the function handler that we have. And then that function handler contains valuable information like what is the type of the event, what is the source of the event, what is the target of the event, and lot of other methods which we will see very often quickly. Okay, let me go here. Let's talk about, instead of consoling.log, I will simply say console.log event.type. Can I do that? Of course, yes. Similarly, console.log, I will simply say event.target. Can I do that? Of course, yes, I can do that. So let's go and let's refresh the page and let me try to see what we can get in the console. So if I go to inspect, if I go to console and if I click on click me, you can clearly see the type of event is click and the target where from this event is being triggered is the button whose ID is BTN. Am I clear? Am I clear? Do we understand this event object properly? Do we understand this event object properly? I want every single student to type yes or no in the chat. Quickly. Perfect. Perfect. Very good. Very good. Let's move forward. Let me come to the previous discussion that I was having on key down, right? We were discussing key down over there. So let me try to make you understand what that key down actually does. Although we already have seen that. So let me go back here on event2.html and let's now understand using the same logic how I am going to take content out of this input field, how I am going to do that, and then how it is going to place that inside my p tag. That's something that we need to understand. Can I use a logic like this? Hey, please do one thing. On this input field, whenever there's a key down, now what is that key with help of which this event is being triggered? Can we find that using event object? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Let's suppose over here I am simply writing A. I know as soon as I write A over there, key down is being triggered. But I also know A is the reason because of which this event was triggered. Now, if I have to find what key was actually responsible for triggering this event, I can find that as well using event. So, which means I can simply go here and tell it event. Then I will simply tell it, please print instead of adfer. I simply wanted to print event dot key. There's an attribute, there's a property which is called key, with the help of which we can simply find which key is responsible for triggering this event. Let me try to go to the inspect and console. So I will simply go here, let me write E. Now when I write E, what is it in the console? E. If I write R, T, you can clearly see whatever key I am typing over there, that is what is being printed inside event.key. So if you have to find even what key is responsible for triggering your event, you can find that using the same event object. Okay, and we can clearly visualize that over here as well. Perfectly fine. Now, can I simply tell it do one thing? Whatever is being typed over there, put that inside the inner HTML of P or put that as text content inside the para. Of course, I can do that. So I can simply go here and I can simply tell it something like this. Hey, the para element that I have for this, please make its text content. Make its text content as. Now, there's one thing called as template literals. Have we discussed template literals, guys? Have we discussed template literals? Yes or no? Have we discussed template literals? A very important way of connecting, concatenating strings with variables. Have we discussed that? If not, then I will teach you that first. If not, let's go here. Let me create a file with the name of literals.html. Okay. This is what I want to do. Okay. This is what I want to do. Let me go back in the output and let me try to open literals like this. So literals.html. Perfectly fine. Very good. And let me try to remove this line of code so that there won't be any error. Now let's understand what literals mean. I have a variable. So where A is equals to, although it's a HTML file, so let me create HTML in which I will simply go and try to print something. Even let me do one thing. Let me try to change the extension of this. Let me write JavaScript. Okay. Because it's a JavaScript concept, so we can directly understand it like this. So let me remove this code. So I will create a variable where A is equals to, or where str1 is equals to. And let me simply say it's adfer. Done. And I simply want to go here, define another variable called as str2 is equals to Rashid. Now, what I want to do is I simply want to create one another variable. in which I simply want to store my name is my first name is Adfar and my last name is Rashid. That's what I want to do. How do I do that? My first name is Adfar, my last name is Rashid. So can I do something like this where str3 is equals to, I will simply say my name is. Now I have to write my name is Adfar. When I say Adfar, it's already stored in a variable. So I have to go there and I have to write plus. And in this plus, I will write str1. Then I will write plus over there. And I will say, and my last name is. And then I will simply go write plus and it's going to be str2. Right? That's what I'm going to do. It's a simple, straightforward thing. I do concatenate multiple strings with help of plus. I do that, right? After that, if I go here, if I try to console.log my var3, str3, if I try to console it, you can clearly see as soon as I execute it, it prints the string. My name is Adfar and my last name is Rashid. Wonderfully, it does that. Perfectly fine. No issues. We don't have any issues in it. But there's a better way. Concatenating a string with a variable, there's an easier way. So instead of concatenating it like this, what I will do is I will simply go define one other variable called as str4. And I will use literals. These literals are simple. You can find them on your keyboard left to numeric 1 key. Template literals. These are called template literals, in which I will simply write my string. My name is. Now, if there's a variable that I have to write, instead of writing it separately plus this, I can write $sign, then I can write curly brace, and then in this I can write my variable name. It's a proper string. It's called template literal. So I can directly concatenate my variable with a string in a single comma over there. Then I will simply write, and my last name is, what's my last name? $curly brace, and then in this curly brace, I'm going to write str2. Now, in this case, also, if I try to console my str4, it's properly going to work. But this time, I'm not writing pulses and all those things. This time, I'm easily concatenating strings. And you can clearly see it's called my name is Adfar and my last name is Rashid, and it properly works. So, of course, this is a better way of concatenating multiple strings with the variables, with the memory fields that we have. Am I clear? Do we answer what literals mean? I think we should. Now, if I go here to my events too, similarly over here, what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to tell it. My intention is whatever I will type over here, that should be the key that is responsible for triggering the event. It should simply give me that inside p tag. So at one place S, then Q, then D, then whatever key I write. So simply what I will do is I will simply go here and I will simply write my para that I have for this, please implement its text content and make it is equals to what? Make it is equals to template literal. In between template literal, I will simply say key pressed. Now key pressed is equals to what? Is equals to then dollar and curly brace my event dot key. Is this properly understood? Do you understand what I did over here? So this is nothing but a template literal which allows me to write JavaScript entity with the strings, normal strings that we have. So key pressed is equals to event dot key. So now if I go here, if I write X, you can clearly see it says X. If I write R, it says R. If I write Y, it says Y. If I write P, it says P. So whatever I am typing over there, it's properly going to actually work. I hope that makes sense. I hope you have understood what what this template literals mean. I can also say event.target. Now, when I say event.target, what does it mean? When I say event.target, you can clearly see it actually prints HTML input element because the target element for this event is this input field. Of course, it cannot print input field in the output, but it prints HTML input object. But inside the input field, I know also there's an attribute which is called a value. So I simply have event.target.value. What does it mean? What is the value of input field? Do we understand that what this value actually means here? Go to the event.target. Event.target is the input field itself. And inside that, find its value attribute, which is the value of the input field. So if I write something like this, let's suppose I'm going to write something like this. You can clearly see whatever I am typing over there, that is being added in front of this key pressed. So it's a value of the input field. So event.target.value. This is something that you will see very often in React. In React, especially, you are going to find event.target.value continuously being used. continuously. Even over here as well, whenever you have to find search, whenever you have to do search functionalities, whenever you have to deal with events, you have to write event.target.value very often. So this is what we mean by event.target.value. I hope it makes sense. Am I completely clear with two things over here? Number one is the event listener. Number two is the event object. Am I clear what these two things mean? Give me a quick confirmation in the chat. Done? Perfect. Very good. Moving forward. Okay. Unfortunately, I see only few yeses in the chat. One or two yeses, not more than that. So please, rest of the students, please put something in the chat so that I can understand how many students are active. And honestly speaking, there's a only 25 students are here. 27 students are here, which is very less number. I don't know why this is the case. There can be two possibilities only. Either I'm not a good teacher, that's one possibility. Another possibility is that you already know stuff. Who are not joining, they already know all these things. So that can be the only two possibilities. Okay, let's move forward. Let's not go there. Let's move forward. We have key down. Similarly, over here, we have one another type of keyboard event, which are called key up, related to inputs. So I will simply go at input. On that, please add an event listener. Now, on that, the event listener that you are going to add is called key up. Now, what is this key up event? Key down, we properly understood. Key down is an event which will be triggered when a key is pressed. Similarly, key up is the opposite of it. Key up is an event which will be triggered when a key is released. So you press a key, then you release it. As soon as key is released, at that point of time, key up event will be triggered. Now on that, I'm simply going to call a function handler like this. Okay, so let me call a function handler like this. Done. In this case, I will simply say again the same thing. Para.text content. Please make the content of this p tag as event.target.value. Event.target is that whenever this event will be triggered, what is the target element that is triggering it, which we know it is input, because on the input field you are adding the event. So event.target becomes this particular input tag. Inside that, what is its value attribute? Display that and put it inside para. Let's find out that. So let me try to comment this much of code because I don't need it now. I don't want to trigger both of them, but I want to trigger only one. It's called key up. Let me try to see it. So if I write C over here, it prints C. If I write V over here, it prints V. If I write U over here, it prints V. If I write I, see, I am continuously typing I, but my event is not being triggered. Why? Continuously, my finger is on I key. It's continuously on it. And why is it not printing something in the output? Why is it not triggering the event? Because I told you, key up is an event which will be triggered whenever key is released. So as long as your finger is on the key, it's not going to trigger it. But as soon as I release it, you can clearly see it prints something. So it prints something like this, and you can clearly see how many eyes I have typed until then. So this key up is an event which will be triggered only under one condition: whenever I am simply going to release the key. On releasing, it's going to be triggered. I hope these two events related to our input fields are quite understood. Now, moving to the most important set of events, most important type of events called as form events. What do we mean by form events? And why is it important? I will give a simple example of it. You create a web application. Any web application, think of any web application. It's Amazon. It is, what is called Snapdeal, Facebook, Instagram, or any website that you can think of. You always see forms everywhere, no matter what. Sign up, login, everywhere. At least these, even if you don't have feedbacks, if you don't have messages, if you don't have anything, but login, sign up. What are those two things? Those two are forms. Now, you're sometimes and it's quite obvious in our mind as well. When we say sign up page, we will write our logic in a way so that I will tell it whenever I will click on sign up, do this. So it means when sign up submission is going to happen, do this. So it means there has to be an event which will actually figure out when this form is going to be submitted. So we need an event that has to be triggered when the form is submitted. That's one thing. Second thing, on an input field, you would want to trigger an event whenever there's a change that's happening inside an input field, trigger something. Again, an event, form event. And there are a lot of other events which we will discuss in 2-3 minutes. But the most important event is that's form submission. That's the form submission. How do we actually determine form submission? That's something that we need to understand. Now, there are questions, sir, how the function no event object? Because it is being passed as an argument to it. JavaScript has already taken care of it. That whenever event is added to that function that will behave as an event handler, it receives an argument which receives every information about that event. So it's already there. Sayed. Okay, it's already there. I don't define, it's already there, defined by the JavaScript itself. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Mostly key down, Pratimesh, not key up. But sometimes key up is also used because they both have different applications. Like whenever you want an event to be triggered as soon as a release at that point of time, you will use key up, but that's very rarely. But key down is the most used event inside our keyboard. Yeah, keyboard events. Okay, I hope this makes sense. Perfectly moving forward. Now, one thing, I think there's a confusion that you guys have. When we talk about event object, it's not about, when we talk about event object, it is not about you need to understand the complete process. Event object is only about when the event is triggered. As soon as event is triggered, you must implement it. As soon as event is triggered, event object will be created. As long as event is not created, event is not triggered, event object will not be created. It automatically passes it over here. Even if I don't mention it here, it automatically passes it here. There are some things that you need to understand. Event is already there. What will happen if I do the same thing? Instead of this, let me do defined function like this. Will event be passed in this case as well? Let's try to figure out that. So let me go here. You can kill it even in this case as well. Even if I don't pass, sorry, not input dot value, but event dot, sorry, event dot target dot value. So event dot target dot value. So if I do something like this, you can clearly see it's still working. So even if you don't pass it here, it's already there. It's already there, always and always. Okay, no matter what. I hope that makes sense. But let me keep fat arrow function here. There's a reason. But because I want you to understand that whenever we talk about function handler, it's not necessary you can write function directly. You can also write fat arrow function or any type of function. It's defaultly there. I hope that makes sense. Moving forward to another file called as event3.html. Okay. Now remember, the events that I'm going to teach, these are the most used events after click. Click is an event which is always used, no matter what. Click is like father of all events. But after that, there are form events, especially submit event, which is used very often, very much often. Whenever we talk about forms, form submission has to be there. Let me go and let me create a simple file in which I will simply define a form. Okay, form with an ID. Let's give it ID. Let's say form, my form, like this. Done. And let me remove action because we don't need action as of now. And the idea of this form is simply my form, in which I will simply create an input field. And this input field will have type text, and let's suppose placeholder over here is equals to email or enter email. So let's say enter email. Done. After that, I'm going to add a break here. After that, I'm going to add another event called as password, placeholder, enter password, something like this. Now, after that, I'm simply going to create a button. Now, button, it will simply say log in or anything, whatever it needs to say. And then on this button, I'm going to add an event. But no, I won't do that. Because this file is not about events on a particular button or particular input. It's not about that. But the events that I'm going to discuss, they are about forms, form submission especially. There's an event that we can now implement on the form element, not on the input fields individually, not on the buttons, and not on those. The first event that we are going to talk about is called on submit. And on this submit, I'm simply going to tell it, please call a function. Okay. What is that function? Whatever. But I won't, of course, add an event like this. It was just for you to understand That event that I'm talking about, it has to be implemented on the forms, not on the buttons, not on the input field. But I will not add an event like this. I will use add event listener. So let me simply go here called as script tag. And inside the script tag, I will simply define a variable called as form is equals to on my document. Please find an element, get an element by ID, and that ID is my form like this. Now on the same form element, please add an event listener. Now, when you add an event listener, I know it receives 3 arguments, but since we are discussing only 2, so let me keep 2 only. Now, on this add event listener, please add a form called as submit. Done. Now, when you add a submit, it has to call a function. So let's call a function like this, like this, like this. Now, I will simply say console.log my adfer over here. Now, if I try to go in the output, I will simply say event 3.html. And once I do that, you can clearly see we have a form like this. Now, see, if I go inside the inspect tool, if I go inside the console, and let me try to write something www.com, okay, and I will write some password, although whether you write it or not, it's completely up to you because both of these fields are not required. So I will click on login. Now, when I click on login, did you saw adfer for a second there? Did you saw adfer for a second there? For a minute second. You can see when I click on login, adfer is there. When I click on login, adfer is there for a minute second, it vanishes. Okay. And also remember one very important point that we have a button, right? Button is equals to login. And I'm telling it on this form, please add a submit event. And on that submit event, please console. Now, let's suppose there's another button over there. And this is called a login 1. This is called a login 2. Okay. And let me click on login 1. When I click on login, adfer. When I click on login, adfer, right? Both of these are working. And always remember that it's better for a button to receive an argument called as type. Now, type is equals to submit, which means that this button that I have inside this form, this is the button with help of which I'm going to submit the form. So please always do that. So even in this case as well, you can clearly see there's still adfer. That's not the point. The point is that whenever we talk about form button type submit, it gives it an extra filter that this button is there for actually submission, not this one. Okay. Although even instead of adding buttons, it's always better to actually add an input field. So I will add an input field over there for which the type is submit over there like this. And value is simply whatever value you have. Now this makes complete sense because it's a form element. Button is not a form element. So now this particular button I have created in a way so that this will be treated as a submission button. So now if you click on this, you can clearly see as soon as I click on login, it actually gives me answer, but it immediately vanishes. So what's happening? Always remember 2 things. Not 2 things, 1 thing over here. Whenever we talk about an element, there's a default nature that it has within itself. For example, for this form submission, whenever you submit a form over there, the default nature of form submission is it is going to submit the form, but it is going to refresh the entire page. That's how form submissions work. That's the default nature of it. So whenever we talk about our form submissions, the default nature of this form is that it is going to refresh the entire page. Do we want that at this point of time? Of course, we do not want that. We simply want to see adfer in the console. We don't want it to refresh the entire page, right? So how do we do that? How do we tell it that please, whatever your default nature is, prevent that with help of an event? I know that this function is going to receive an argument called as event. Even if I don't pass it, it's still going to work. Then using the same event, I will simply tell event के अंदर एक method है. Inside event, there's a method called as prevent default. So it means that whenever on this form submit is going to be event, triggered, whatever for that event, its default nature is prevent that. Form submission has a default nature, which is it's going to refresh the entire page. But if you want to prevent that, we can simply use event.prevent default, and it is going to prevent the default nature of it. So now when I click on login over there, clearly something is not happening here. But when I click on it, unfortunately, so let me click on login. So why is it not? Okay, because we are not consoling anything, right? So let me simply go console.log. Let me simply say console.log adfer. Now when I click on login, you can clearly see adfer is here. Now it is not refreshing the entire page. And this method is also asked in interviews very much. What is event.prevent default? So it means that whenever we want to prevent the default nature that is being caused by that event, in that particular case, we use a method called as event.prevent default. So what is event.prevent default? Let me repeat it once again. Whenever we perform an event, that event can have default nature. Like submitting a form has a default nature. It is going to refresh the entire page. Even if you want to prove that, I will simply go write a@a.com. Okay. Let me go password 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Let me remove this event.prevent default nature. Let me not have it. So when I click on, unfortunately, let me write it again. So I will go write a dot whatever, password is whatever. I will click on login. You can see it refreshes the entire page. Now there are no values. And even it does not hold the adfer in the console. But now if I get this back, when I get this back, whatever email I will write over here, okay, whatever password I will write over here, as soon as I click on login, it has submitted the form. Whatever it needs to do, it has done that, but it has also prevented refreshing the entire page. That's why in the email field you can still see email. That's why in the password field you can still see password. Am I clear? Am I clear? Yes or no? Do we answer what event.prevent default is? I hope that makes sense. Now, what I want to do is I simply want one thing, which is I want to console what is my email. I want to console, let me write type is equals to email here, not text. I want to console what's my password, or I want to console any one of them. Okay. So let me try to, instead of consoling it like this, I will simply say, let's say, I want to get the email value. So let me say, let my email val is equals to, in my document, please get an element over there where the ID is something. So let me give it some ID. So I will simply go write ID is equals to EM, whatever you want, right? So document dot get element by ID, and that ID over there is going to be EM. For that, please check its input value, whatever its value attribute is. So now whatever I have typed inside that email, it's going to be stored inside email val variable. We know that, right? We have seen that how what value attribute is, how it's going to work. We know that. After that, I will simply tell give me an alert. Now, in an alert over there, I would want to simply give me an template literal, where it simply won't say form submitted, and it is going to print me an email over there, this which is dollar curly brace, and that is going to be email val. Can I do that? Of course, I can do that. So let's see it. So I will simply go here. Let me write a@a.com. Let me write password, whatever password is, and let me write login. As soon as I write login, it gives me a particular form submission, which is a@a.com. Okay, a@a.com. So that's what we mean by form submission. And you can clearly imagine, you can clearly understand, whenever there's a form submission is always going to be there. Don't we agree with that always, guys? Don't we agree with that? That whenever there's a form inside my web application, the intention will always be to submit the form. And if your intention is to submit the form submission, this on submit event will always be there no matter what. That's why it's very important, very much important. And I hope the most important thing from your events, form events, is this event.prevent default. The most important thing. So please make sure that you understand it. Please make sure. Done. Moving forward. Hello, sir. Sorry I got late today. My interview. I hope your interview went well. And sure, please make sure that you stay up till end now. And please also watch the first 1 hour recording later on as well, because we have discussed something very important. Okay. Perfect. Moving forward. There's another few more types of our events. They're form events. Some of them are input events as well. One another input event that we are going to talk about is going to be on change event. And please also share some questions, Shivani, that have been asked to you over here in the chat section as well, so that other people might note them down as well. Okay, whatever questions have been asked related to anything that this interview was about, please put them in the chat. Okay, that will be very helpful. Thank you so much. If my teaching has helped you a little bit in that, that is it. What what I want actually from this entire batch. That whatever I have taught, it should help you in the interview so that you can find a crack a job. So please put some questions in the chat if you can. Okay, Thank you so much. Okay, moving forward. Now, let me go back to let me create one other file, which is going to be event4.html, because I'm still talking about form elements, and let's try to understand what form events other we have. Let me go and let me create a form. Inside that form, I'm simply going to have an input field. Okay, and this input field type is equals text. For this input field, I will simply say on change. Okay, what do we mean by on change event? Okay, even let's not talk about on change here. Let me add on change using my add event listener. So let me add a script tag. In this script tag, I will simply try to add an event listener to this input field. So let me go here, add an ID with an input text here. Now, please pay attention here. Leave everything aside as of now. Put attention here because there are three events that we are going to talk about it, and then we will take a break of 10 minutes. I will simply say where my input over here is equals to on my document, please get an element by ID, and that ID is input field. Done. After that, on this input field, please add an event listener like this, like this. But event listener is going to be right now change. What is the event listener? Change. And what it's going to do is it's simply going to console.log. It's simply going to console event.key or event.target.value. This is what it's going to console. And it's not about what we are consoling, it's about when this event is going to be triggered, this change. What we mean by change event, that's what it's actually about. So let me go here and let me try to open a file with the name of event4.html. Okay, leave everything aside, please pay attention. Let Shivani put the questions in the chat, and rest of the students, please pay attention here. Even Shivani, let's put the questions in the break. So pay attention here, and then later on put the questions, whatever questions have been asked. Okay, perfect. Now see over here. I'm simply going to go over here. I'm simply writing ADFAR. So when I write ADFAR, do you see anything in the console? Do you see anything in the console? Of course not. There's nothing in the console. So what does on change actually mean? What does on change actually mean? At this point of time, there's an adfer. And when I come out of this input field, we can see adfer in the console. So what's happening? Let me go over and inside this again. Let me let R and let me remove it and let me come back. I don't see anything in the console. So what does on change mean? Let me refresh the page and let's have it like this. At this point of time, what is the value of input field? It's null. It's an empty string. If I write A and then come out of this input field, you guys tell me, is there a change inside this input field before and after, a few seconds back and now? Yes, there's a change between the value. Earlier it was empty and now it is A. So if I come back over here, you can clearly see it prints A. Now, if I go here, write DFAR, is there a change between the previous value and now? Of course, there's a change. So ADFAR, there was A and now DFAR is added. So there's a change inside the value. Now it will be triggered. So whenever inside an input field, there's a change that it detects. And as soon as it detects a change, it's going to trigger the function handler that we have. Let me go here. Let me simply write something like this. And let me try to erase everything. Do we have any change now? Though I wrote something in it, but I erased everything. Now there's only adfer. Earlier there was adfer. Now there's adfer. If I come out of this, I don't see anything in the console because there's no change. So on change is an event which is being triggered whenever there's a change detected inside an input field. By change, I mean in its value. And if there's a change in its value, the event will be triggered immediately. I hope that makes sense. So give me a quick confirmation whether we understand on change or not. Give me a quick confirmation. Done. Moving forward. Another type of event. So let me try to comment this over here. And on the same input field, I will add another event. What is that event called? It's called on focus. So let me simply type on my event. Please add an event listener. And that event listener is called focus. Okay. What does focus mean? Let's try to understand that in a second. In this case, I will simply tell it on focus. Okay, even let me remove this console.log focus. Have you guys seen in websites, whenever there's an input field, when you go inside that input field, it changes its background color? Like as of now, this input field is simply white. Even if I go inside it, there's nothing. There's nothing. It's completely okay. But now I will simply tell, whenever this focus event is being triggered, at that point of time, please target the same input field, change its style attribute, please make its background color over here. What? Make its background color, let's suppose pink. Okay. And let's see when it's pink. But what does focus mean? Focus means when you enter inside that input field, when this input field receives focus. By focus I mean when you enter inside it. So you can clearly see when I enter inside it, this event is being triggered and the background color of the input field is now pink. And you might have seen lot of use case of it. You might have seen such functionalities in your website. I hope this makes sense. Am I clear? Am I clear? Yes or no? Do we understand what focus is? Focus is a very straightforward event. Focus means whenever this input field receives a focus, do this. By focus, I mean whenever an user enters inside the input field, do this. And for that, we have an event called as focus. I hope this makes complete sense. There's one last event, form event, which we are going to discuss called as blur. So on the input field, please add an event listener. And what is that event listener called as blur? And then once this is happening at that point of time, please do one thing, change the input dot style dot background color not to white but to red. Actually, even let me try to uncomment this one as well. Let me keep focus as well as blur. Okay, focus means when you actually go there and you give focus to the input field, as soon as you do that, this event will be triggered and the background color is pink. But what does blur mean? Blur means reverse of focus. When you leave that input field, when your input field does not have focus at that point of time, when you remove the focus out of it, it is called blur. And you can clearly see when I come out of it, the background color of the input field is red. So when it receives the focus, it's pink. When I remove the focus, it becomes blur, and this particular function is being triggered, and this function is called, and which makes its background color as red. So with this, we have completely understood our form events as well. Am I clear? Do we understand it properly? Yes or no? Do we understand it properly what these form events are? Done? Perfectly fine. Perfect. Now, last type of events. Although I think we should not discuss them, you can discuss them on your own as well, but let me show you at least one. We know what window object is. Do we? Of course, yes. As soon as we create a web application, as soon as we open it in a tab, the tab is represented by a window object. We have understood that in our previous classes as well. Now, on the window object itself, there can be some of the what is this called, events like scroll. Scroll done on a particular element or on the window? Scroll up down, scroll left right, it's done on a window. Like resize, when we try to resize the tab, do we resize an element or window? We resize element window over there. So in those cases, those are also the actions that you perform on that web document. If you want that when I perform such actions, do this at that point of time, we have a set of events over there called as window events over there. Let me show you a very simple example of it. Rest you can actually work on your own. I will simply tell it on my window, please add an event listener. Can we add an event listener on window? Of course, yes. On window, I can add an event listener. Of course, yes. The event name is by default, not by default. Let me use one of them called as resize. At this point of time, please give me, let's say, let me think of something. Let's give me the width. At that point of time, give me the width because I'm going to resize the window. So when we talk about resizing the window from left, right, or top, bottom, it's going to resize the width and height of that window. I want to print that. So I will simply say window resize. Not only that, I'm simply going to say console.log. Then let me implement template literals over there. I will simply tell it, please print me what is Windows width. And this Windows width is going to be equals to dollar curly brace. I will simply tell window dot, whenever you have to receive whatever its width is, the property that we call as inner width. Okay, this is the property we talk about, not inner height, but inner width. This is the property. After that, I will simply go tell it, give me window height as well. So give me height as well. What is window height? Dollar curly brace, give me window dot inner height as well. So what is the inner height of that particular window? We can print such things when we resize our window. So what is this particular line of code that we have implemented on line number 22 to 25, 26? It means whenever the window on which I am working, I am going to resize it. At that point of time, please go over there and tell me whatever the new coordinates of inner width and inner height are, print me that. Now, if I try to go over here inside the console, let's see how it's going to print. So let me go inspect console. Done. So at this point of time, the window width is 1024, window height is 486, right? Let me try to resize it. So if I resize it, you can clearly see over there my parameters over there are continuously changing. Height is same, but only window width is changing. You can see it is 300 right now, 301, 302, 303, 304. Even in this case as well, if I try to reduce the height as well, you can clearly see my height should also be implemented. So now height is 220. So the point is not I am trying to print window height and window width. That's not the point. The point is when is it getting triggered? It is getting triggered whenever I am trying to resize. And the conclusion over here is that even events can be implemented on the window itself. Scroll is an event that we can use. So can you link so that I can send it in my college group? Which link are we talking about? Can you send the link? That's what you mean, right? But which link are we talking about? So I hope you have completely understood all the event types. If you have not, please make sure that you watch the video again. And also, please like this video right now. Please do that. Okay, please do that. Sir, when we in our tomorrow's class will be about asynchronous JavaScript. Tomorrow's class is going to be the most important class in the entire JavaScript, because there will be at least a lot of questions related to interviews, and that's what we actually do. Even let me tell you one thing. Do you think right now I am writing JavaScript? Of course I am writing JavaScript. It's a JavaScript, right? It is JavaScript. But don't we know that JavaScript is a synchronous top to bottom, right? Top to bottom approach. If it's a top to bottom approach, why is it getting executed when I only click here? Because now it is executing the code which is in between. That's something that you need to understand tomorrow's class. Even DOM itself, how it works, we will understand that as well. How it is executed inside our web document, we will understand that in our tomorrow's class as well. So tomorrow's class is going to be the most important class. So make sure you join, you ask your friends to join. Even if they know JavaScript, they are going to enjoy tomorrow's class. We will completely get a complete idea of, with a proper practical, how JavaScript executes its asynchronous code as well, even synchronous as well, every code. So tomorrow will be the conclusion of that. So we will discuss asynchronous JavaScript tomorrow, Bharat. And once we discuss asynchronous JavaScript, we will learn APIs, how to fetch APIs, how to fetch data. And once we do that, then we will create a project. Okay. Project हम बनाएंगे. See, unfortunately, right now, there are a lot of things that I'm doing. Like I'm busy, I'm occupied in multiple places. That's why I'm not creating any project as of now. Otherwise we would have already created project. So as soon as I find some time in between, I will definitely show you a very good project, even in HTML CSS, even in HTML CSS JavaScript, even in React as well. So that is the plan, and that's what I'm going to do. But as of now, I'm a little bit occupied. Also, one another thing for this batch, I have partnered with one another, you can say a particular ad tech, you can say, or something like that. And tomorrow they have a session of resume building. Okay. Resume building. Tomorrow there will be a session in the evening from 7 or 8, 7 to 9. How to build a resume, a powerful resume on YouTube, but on a different channel. And definitely all of you have to be there. And once the session is done, you will submit a Google form and you will receive a certificate of appreciation related to that as well, which you can share on your LinkedIn by tagging me as well. Okay. So tomorrow's session, that's a mandatory session for every single student who is part of my batch. So you must join that in tomorrow's evening. Okay, we will have our session in the morning, but in the evening we will have another session which is resume building. Okay, and resume building is something very important, and uh, I've worked hard for that to arrange that session. Okay, and that is only and only for all of you guys. So please make sure you all join. And I don't know why, but sometimes I feel very bad when I see less number of students here, because the effort and the dedication that I put for this batch, and still I don't see that positive response. Evening 7 to 9, I guess, and that's something that's really hurtful sometimes when I see less number of students here. So let's take a break of 10 minutes now. After 10 minutes we are going to discuss that third argument of our ad event listener, which is a concept called as bubbling and capturing. So do not leave the class. Even if there's a break of 10 minutes, stay here. Do not leave. Stay here for these 10 minutes as well. Do not leave the class, because I know these 25 6 24 students, you are serious guys. Okay, I will share the WhatsApp link in the meantime as well, and let's see how it goes. ठीक है ना? So I will share it. Perfect. See you guys. Bye. After 10 minutes. See you guys after 10 minutes exactly. Please make sure that I will share the link. Okay, to you can share, even you can copy the link from WhatsApp yourself as well. But let me share it because some other might join from this chat. So let's take a break of 10 minutes. I will share the link in the meantime, and then we will continue. Okay. Hey guys, hi everyone, welcome back. I hope I'm audible as well as visible. Am I? Hello guys, hi everyone. I think I should be audible now as well as visible, right? Perfect, great. Okay, so I guess we can start our session again. And unfortunately, there are only 14 students here in the class. So let's see what we can do with respect to that. But let's continue, okay? So, our this next half session, we are going to discuss two of the very important topics, and both of them are related to interviews, okay? And also, you are going to implement them no matter what. Whenever you talk about events, we will implement them, okay? Now, let's understand one thing, which is called as event listener, okay? We know that we have passed two arguments straight. Number one was the event itself, the name of the event, and number two is the event handler, which is going to be triggered whenever this event is, called, right? Triggered. On the other case, I told you when I explained you the syntax of event listener, I told you there's a third argument as well called as bubbling and capturing phase, which is a Boolean value. Either it will be true or it will be false. And what do we mean by this? Remember one thing. Whenever an event is triggered, any event, it moves through two phases. Always remember that. No matter what, it can move into two phases. There's a possibility that it might move in one phase or another phase. And what do we mean by these two main phases? Let's understand it with an example. I know that we have to first of all understand what those two phases are. One phase is called capturing phase, another one is called bubbling phase. But let's create the environment for it so that we can understand actually the real implementation of it. So I will simply create a file with the name of bubbling.html. You can also write bubbling/html capturing.html. Okay. And let me try to open this bubbling in the output. So bubbling, done. And like this, perfect. Now see and pay close attention. Let me create a series of elements. So what I will do is I will simply go here and I will try to create a parent, grandparent, and child. Grandparent, parent, child. So let me get div with an id over there called as g parent. Okay. In this, I will create another div with an id of parent, and then in this div, I will simply create another div with the parent of child like this. Perfect. Very good. After that, I will not create any content in it, but I will simply try to design it a little bit. So let me go here and let me try to implement some style in it. Now in this style, I will simply go write G parent. Okay. Let's target the ID G parent. For this, let me give it a height over there of, let's say, 300 pixel. Let me give it width of, let's say, 300 pixel. Okay. And let me give it some background color, whatever the color we want to make it visible. So let's give it background color of, let's say, red. Done. And we can clearly visualize our grandparent div, the main parent div in the output. Moving forward, hash parent parent. For this, I will simply go give it a height of, let's say, 200 pixel. Done. And after that, I will simply give it a width of 200 pixel. Done. And finally, I will simply give it a background color over there of, let's say, blue violet. Done. Moving forward, I will simply go at hash child. For my hash child, I will simply go implement a height over there of 100 pixel. Then I will simply go give it a width over there of 100 pixel. And then I will simply go and give it a background color of, let's say, something like caddet blue. So we can visualize all of these three input fields here. Can we visualize them? Of course. We can say this red is grandparent. This is parent as well as grandparent. This is child as well as parent as well as grandparent. Do we all agree with that? Because when I click on this, it means I'm clicking on child as well as I'm clicking on parent as well as I'm clicking on grandchild. Yes or no? Similarly, when I click on this, it means I'm clicking on parent as well as on grandparent. When I click on this, it means only I'm clicking on parent or grandparent over there, not the otherwise, right? Now, I will simply go here and I will simply try to implement some script on it. By that, I simply want to implement some events, a simple event. Let me go, let me try to read all this grandparent which we have. So let me go right where G parent over there. On this G parent, please from my document dot get element by ID, please try to read this element which is having the ID as grand parent, like this, perfectly fine. Control C, Control V, Control V. Second variable is going to be parent, and which is going to be read an element from parent. Third variable is going to be child, and the element that I'm going to read will have an ID called as child. So what have I done? I have read all of these three values here. Perfect, fine. Now pay attention. Pay close and close attention here. In this case, I will simply go and on my grand parent, I will go and tell it on this, please add an event listener. And that event listener is called click, like this, comma, please call a function. And that function is simply going to say console.log grand parent click. Now it completely makes sense. As soon as I go to inspect, whenever I click anywhere over there, it's going to print it. Whether I click here, whether I click here, whether I click here, it does not matter where I click, because everything is grand parent. Everything is the main container. So everywhere I click, it's going to call my grand parent like this. Very good. Moving forward. After that, apart from this grand parent, I'm also going to add the same event on the parent. So on my parent, please add an event listener. The event listener is called a click, and you are going to call a function like this, like this, like this, like this. Okay, in which you are going to simply click on parent, click it. Similarly, over I'm simply going to say child. On this, add a click event listener, and that event listener is called a click, and you are going to simply call a function, and that function is simply going to console.log child click it. Now, what is happening over here? I'm adding simply events to their respective containers. That's what I'm trying to do, nothing else. Okay. But when we try to trigger the event, that's what we need to understand. How this event flow is going to happen. Whenever event is triggered, how it is going to move from one element to another element. That's what our discussion is, and that's what capturing and bubbling is actually about. So let's try to see how it works. So if I try to go into the inspect over there and let me try to console, let me try to refresh my page. When I click on this red only, it does not contain any parent part. You can clearly see grand parent is being called wonderfully. But let me click on child. So when I click on child over there, what is the first event that is being triggered? That is related to child, then a parent, then a grandparent. Yes or no? Which is quite obvious, because when I click on it, it's going to click on parent as well as grandparent. But the point is, how is it moving? Is it moving from parent to child, which means from the parent hierarchy to child hierarchy, or is it moving from child to parent? As of now, we can simply say that the events that I am actually creating over there, events that I'm actually trying to trigger, they are like simply like a bubble, like water in a bubble. So first, the flow is like this. This is how it's going to be. If you try to understand the flow, this is my element, then this is another element, this is another element. This is my grandparent, this is my parent, this is my child. Now, in this case, by default, when in a particular add event listener, there are only two arguments, event and event listener. There's no third argument. My events get triggered in this way, from bottom to up. Now, think about in a water. Like when you are inside a water and you bubble. What does bubble mean? From inside out. This is what we mean by bubbling. That whenever your event, once the event reaches the target element, it starts moving to the root element, from the inner but to the root element. At that point of time, we can simply understand that this phase in which the elements events are moving, this is called bubbling phase. Am I clear with the definition? Am I clear? Am I clear with the definition? I should be. If not, let me try to repeat it. Please like this video right now. Bubbling means if there are multiple elements and they share the events. Like this element, when you click on it, it also shares the event of parent, it also shares the event of grandparent, and maybe it shares the event of bubbling as body as well, and then HTML, or maybe there are some other parents. But this is what bubbling means. Bubbling means the event, once the event reaches the target element, once the event reaches this target element, it starts moving up to the root. It starts moving up to the root. So it will trigger first the event that is attached to this element, then it will trigger the event that's attached to this element, then it will trigger the element that's event that is attached to this event. So it moves back up to the root. So the movement of event triggering is from bottom to up, like a bubble in water, like a bubble in water. So, and it will call every event that is in its way. So when I click on this, it does not stop here. It does not stop here. It actually calls an event this as well, because this event is also click event and it comes into this way. It will call event for this as well because it comes into this way as well. And it will not stop. It will call any event listener, attach it to the parameter along the way. Now, whenever such movement of event triggering is happening, this particular movement is called event bubbling. What is it called? And this is the default nature of my events. The default nature of my event triggering is event propagation. It's called event propagation. The events are propagated from inner to outer parent, and along the way, how many events we have, it's going to trigger, but from inner to outer. This particular thing is called event bubbling. I think now it should completely make sense. Am I clear? Am I clear? Yes or no? Give me a quick confirmation in the chat, and then I will move forward with capturing. What capturing actually means. And by default, it's bubble. Always from inner to outer events are going to be triggered no matter what. The flow, the movement of event propagation is going to be bubble, like a bubble. So along the way, if there are same events, trigger them. So there's a along the way, there's an event with respect to this, there's an event with respect to this, so it's going to trigger them as well. On the other hand, now I don't want the way like this. I want my event movement from the root element to inner, from my gradient parent to inner. Even if I click on inner, that's what I want. For that, I have to give the third argument to this. So I will simply give it a third argument called as true. It means make the capturing phase. That's why this argument is called capturing phase. By default, it's false. By default, it is false. Now when I write true over there, it means the events are going to be in a capturing phase. So comma, I will simply go here as well, and let me write true here as well. Now see, when I implemented true on the parent, true on the gradient parent, now the same movement of events, even if I click on child, now first the flow, the movement of event propagation is from outer to inner, like a capture. I'm capturing from outer to inner. I am capturing. This is called capturing. Am I clear? Do you understand what capturing means? Capturing is simply that my elements are like this. Simply my elements are like this, like this, like this. So this is my parent, 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 and this is the inner child. And if I even click on this, but the flow is going to be here. So I'm capturing the event propagation. So whenever this happens at that point of time, my implementation, my intention is to capture the event propagation, nothing else. Now, if I click on even on the parent as well, so let me try to refresh the page. Let me click on parent. You can see gradient parent, parent. It's still capturing. When I click on this, only parent over there. On the other way around, if I remove the true over there, let me not have true, true here. In this case, if I see, it is by default bubbling here. Because when I click on this child, parent, gradient parent, when I click on this parent and gradient parent, when I click on this gradient parent. So this is bubbling. This is capturing. Am I clear? Am I clear? Yes or no? Give me a quick confirmation whether we understood bubbling or capturing. It's simply how the event is going to propagate. Is it going to propagate in bubbling phase, or is it going to propagate in capturing phase? That's what our intention is. Give me a quick confirmation. Perfect. Wonderful. Moving forward, there's one another point here, which is one of the very important points. That if you look at this particular web application, when I click on this, my intention is that for this particular container, this is the container as of now. So when I click on this, at that point of time, it is triggering child, parent, grandparent, right? But I don't want it. I want it to trigger only the child, because that's what my intention was. Maybe this container that I have, it's not a div, it's a button. So let's suppose I will simply go here, and instead of div, I will simply make it button like this. So when I make it a button, it is a button like this. You can clearly see it's a button, right? Let me add some text as well. So let me simply say it is login. Done. Even let's suppose this over here, it's not a div, it is something different, anything or image or anything. Let me simply go create, or let's keep it div only. So this is a button. Now you guys tell me, we have containers, we have buttons. Yes or no? We have containers. Inside those containers, we have buttons. That's the real application, how we have our web application. Now, don't you think we might have written a logic that when I click on this container, do something dynamic? Then when I click on this button, do something dynamic. But bubbling says, Even if you click on login, it will not stop here, but along the way it's going to execute rest of the events as well. And do we want that? Because our button's intention was to submit, and this div's intention was to change the h1 element. And if I click on button over there, it's not stopping here, it's executing this as well, which we do not want. Sometimes we want to stop the propagation. We want to stop the propagation over here on the button. If button is clicked, let this event only be triggered. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm trying to say, Basu? Of course, it is used everywhere because this is the default nature. Along the way, execute its parent propagations as well. But we do not want that sometimes, because when we talk about this button, whatever this button is supposed to do, I want it to stop there. But along the way, if there are containers, inside them there are buttons, inside them there are images. If I click on image, I want whatever this image is supposed to do, let it do. Don't let this trigger the parent propagation as well. I don't want that. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Give me a quick confirmation in the chat. So for that, by default, the behavior is bubbling. Or by default, even if you add true, it will make it capturing. But we do not want that. In lot of cases, we want this button to be implemented only. We would not want our parents or grandparents events to be triggered. That's not what we want. So in that case, we can simply go on that element. I can simply use over there, and I can tell it. I can simply implement a method over there. What is that method? I will tell it. Whenever I click on this button, at that point of time, use the event dot and tell it to use stop propagation. Stop propagation over it. Do not go. Doesn't matter whether it's bubbling or capturing. Do not go beyond it. So now when I go here in the web application that we have, and if I click on it, you can clearly see it's only calling the child. And this is what we would want in our web applications. We would not to propagate our events from root to child or from child to root. That's not what we would want in most cases. That's where bubbling and capturing comes into place. That we do not want bubble. We don't want water bubbles of event propagation. We do not capture. We do not want to capture the event propagation in our events, but we want to stop it. And that's why we have a method called as event.stop propagation, asked in the interviews as well. I hope you have completely understood what bubbling is, what capturing is, and how it works. So if I have to quickly wrap up, when an event is triggered, it moves through two main phases. Number one is called capturing phase, event capture. It's called event capture as well. The event start at the root of the DOM and works its way to the target element, where from the element was triggered. So if you look at this, if I click on this, this is the target element. So if we talk about our capturing, this is how it's going to capture. This is how it's going to capture. Right? This is what we make capturing. So it starts at the root element and then moves to the top along the way and reaches to the target element. So my events are propagated from root to the target. But if we talk about bubble, so from target to root, this is what we mean bubble. But we can also stop it anywhere, wherever we want. In that case, we can use a method called as event.stop propagation. I hope this makes sense. I want every one of you to give me a quick confirmation in the chat before I move to one other property of events called as event delegation. Give me a quick confirmation. Every one of the students must reply in the chat so that we can start our another topic called as event delegation. Child, don't say child. Say target to root. Don't say child. Target to root. Where from event is being triggered from that target element to root. This is called bubbling. Then from the root to the target, this is called capturing. And we can stop it anywhere as well, wherever we want. On that element, we have to use event.stop propagation. I hope this makes sense. Now, moving to one another very important method inside our events, although you might not implement it that much, but it's a very hot topic for interviews especially. I don't know why I see right now 33 students. Maybe it's because I am about to share an address link. Okay, so that's why I can see 33 students, but that's not how it should work. Okay, इससे आप अपने आप को धोखा दे रहे हो, मुझे नहीं. Remember that. Okay, so I'm going to create event delegation .html. Perfect. How many files we created in events? I have never even, honestly speaking, there are students in this class right now who are part of paid batches while I teach, paid batches. Ask them whether this is the content over there we deliver or not. Ask them this much of this depth of content. And yet I see only 20 people here. Okay, leave it. So let's discuss this. Now, moving forward. What is event delegation? What is event delegation? Event delegation is a technique. Okay. It's a technique. Remember that. It's a technique, which means whether you want to implement it, it's completely up to you. It's not a predefined logic. It's a technique. Techniques mean it can be implemented in any way. Whatever, it depends on the developer itself. Event delegation, similarly, there's one another concept related to event propagation called as capturing and not sorry, it's called debouncing and throttling, which we will discuss at the end, not today but at the end, because for that we will use a very good example. Wherever the debouncing throttling is necessary, over there we will learn those two techniques. But when we say it's a technique, it means it can be implemented in any way. So event delegation is a technique used to handle events efficiently. What does that mean? It is used to handle events efficiently by attaching a single event listener to the parent element rather than each individual child element. What do we mean by that? Let's suppose there is a parent, and inside that parent there are elements. Okay, there are elements. Let me talk about an example. Let's say there's an unordered list, and inside that unordered list there's list item, list item, list item, list item. So now what I want is, I simply want to attach an element to each individual list item. And let's suppose there are 20 individual list items. Will I add 20 events on 20 individual items? No. But we will try to implement it in a better way. We will try to attach an event to the parent and then implement some logic with help of which we can add the events, handle events in a more efficient way. That's what our agenda is. So, and this technique that we use, it's more often used only under one condition. Only under one condition. More often used 80-90% of time, when an element we are trying to add, when we don't have already static elements, but we are trying to add elements dynamically. Like there's an unordered list, there's only one item in it, but rest of the items I am adding dynamically. For that particular reason, we add this event delegation. So it's a technique, nothing else. So let me use UL, unordered list, with an ID over there. Let's say list, inside which I have list, and it says item 1, then control C, control V. Let me have only item 2, like this. Perfectly fine. And let me try to divide my screen into two parts. Let me close this, and in bubbling I will open my event delegation. Done, and we can see item 1, item 2. After that I will simply write script. Okay, so what am I going to do over here? Let me try to read the element with an ID list. Okay, and over here what I will do is I will simply try to delegate. I will simply try to add events over there, handle events in a more efficient way. That's what my agenda is. So let me think of a scenario. Okay, so let's do one thing. I will simply tell it on my list, please add an event listener, because eventually it's a technique. Remember that event delegation is a technique with help of which we simply, instead of adding events to childs one by one, we will add event on the parent. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I think mujhe yaad aa jayega, and then we will simply create it. So lister.add event listener, click, and on this I know I'm going to simply call a function, whatever that function is. I'm going to pass an event object to it, like this. Now I will simply tell it, since it gave me a suggestion as well, this is what I'm going to do. I will simply tell if my event dot target dot tag name. What does tag name over there mean? That if the event dot target dot tag name is equals to li. What does this mean? What does this mean? Let's try to understand that. But before, even if I implement this, let me not implement it. Let me simply go write console.log, and I will simply say event dot target dot tag name. Okay, let's see how it's going to work. So, and let me add more list items over there. Okay, so let me go and let me write. Okay, so let's go and let me try to open inspect. See, now on this parent over there, on this unordered list, I have implemented a click event. Now see, if I click on, let me go to console. If I click on item 1, it prints li. If I click on item 2, it prints li. If I click on item 3, it prints li. If I click on item 4, it prints li. So it means what is target? Event dot target. Event dot target means simply that particular location where from this event is being triggered. That's what event dot target means. Remember that, okay? So you can clearly see when I click on this, at that point of time, this list item becomes the target. When I click on this list item becomes the target. When I click on this list item becomes the target. When I click on this list item becomes the target over here. So in that particular case, I can simply tell it, okay, because in this, the intention was that instead of adding the list item, the events individually, I simply have told it, if the event or target or tag name is li, do this. So it means that now based on the target, I am actually adding an event. I am actually doing a particularly executing a logic. So in this case, let me simply give an alert. And in this alert, I will simply tell it what? Tell it you have clicked like this. And what have you clicked? You have clicked simply what? Dollar curly brace. And then I'm simply going to say event dot target dot text content like this. So event.target.text content, that's what I'm doing. So if I now go here and if I click on this item 4, it consoles item 4. You can see that it consoles item 4. If I click on item 3, it consoles item 3. If I click on item 2, it consoles item 2. So now it actually gives you a representation like you have added events on the individual item. So this technique that I've implemented over there, it actually gives you a sense that instead of attaching these click events one by one, I have implemented a way it looks like I have attached events on them individually. Do we feel that, guys? Yes or no? Do we feel that? Do we feel that? Yes or no? Right? So when I click on item 1, it looks like I'm having an event on item 1 only, and that's what it's printing. I hope it makes sense. And this concept is called event delegation. So event delegation is a technique used to handle events efficiently by attaching a single event listener to the parent, rather than we attach those events on each individual child elements. And as I said, that this particular technique, the technique that I showed you over it, this is used when we want to attach elements dynamically in a parent. At that point of time, we implement it like this. I hope this makes complete sense. And I hope with this, you have gotten a complete understanding of what DOM is. And trust me, there are a lot of, even if I start teaching you, if I give you more 3 classes on DOM, it will still be left incomplete. So there are a lot of things that we can discuss in with respect to our DOM. A lot of things over there. Whatever you think of, it can be treated, it can be created with DOM. So there's a concept called as we can client XY. There's a concept called as get bounding client rect over there. So there are a lot of methods. Have you seen that in web applications, whenever you take your cursor, wherever you go with that cursor, there's a pointer with it. There's a firecracker with that pointer, right? So it means it's also done by DOM. And how can we get the coordinates of a cursor? That is also done by DOM. There are proper methods with respect to that. Wherever that cursor goes, I will get the coordinates of it. Have you seen such kind of things? That you take cursor on your web application. So if this is your web application, wherever you take cursor, to this cursor, there is something that follows this cursor. Maybe a dragon, maybe a small fireball, maybe a heart, maybe something like that. You might have seen some such kind of things in your web application. So my point that I'm trying to make you understand is that even with respect to cursor, there are a lot of methods. You want to do anything, you can do that with DOM. And you have to do a little bit research on your own now as well. So in today's class, our today's class that we discussed, it was completely dedicated to events. Completely dedicated to events, in which we discussed mouse events, we discussed form events, we discussed keyboard events, we discussed window events, we discussed input events, we discussed a lot of events, right? And not only that, we also after that discussed add event listener, capturing phase, bubbling phase. We discussed propagation, how propagation works. We discussed a lot of XYZ things. So please make sure that you understand these things properly. You have to do a little bit research on your own, and you have to practice a little bit research, practice a little bit on your side. So do that, okay? So let me share the attendance form. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, okay? Do we have any questions? So this is the attendance. Please submit it right away. And only those students who have been active in the class. If you are not active, there's no point of you submitting the attendance, okay? So submit the attendance only under one condition. if you have been part of this class. If not, then it's one of the same things. If you have watched this entire session, I want to know that what was your steps to learn the JavaScript deeply. Do you think I know JavaScript deeply? I don't think so. Allow me a second. First of all, first of all, in order to learn JavaScript, I would say it was not just in few months. I'm still learning JavaScript, if you ask me. So it takes lot of time. Okay, it takes a lot of time. I have practiced it very much. I have created notes, like honestly speaking, I have handwritten notes of JavaScript, React, HTML, CSS as well, even backend nodes, MERN, and all those things. I have these many notes. Trust me, this is the stack of notes that I have, handwritten notes. So I have done a lot of hard work around it. So if you want to get a complete idea of JavaScript, you have to do a lot of hard work. You have to spend time. Somehow, I don't know why, but freshers think we need an instructor who can teach us JavaScript entirely and we will be good. No. Yes, you need a good instructor. Like you have got one, I think. And you now need to do a little bit research on your side, on your own, implement some projects, create some projects, use DOM. I will give you a quick assignment tomorrow. Hopefully, in the tomorrow evening, I will launch one assignment related to DOM, which you will have to create. Small assignment related to DOM, which you have to create. But every day a proper discipline you have to follow. Yes, please share that. Every day a proper discipline you have to follow. You have to spend at least 2 hours of time every day, no matter what. Every day, 2 hours of time, no matter what. If you don't have that consistency in your learning, if you don't have that discipline in your learning, that you do coding today and then after 3 days you do a coding, that's not how it's going to work. No matter how good you are at coding, you are going to fail. So you have to be that much consistent every day. Spend a particular time slot, find that particular time slot, 2 hours of time slot, and implement your coding. Implement what you have learned. Create new stuff. Practice every day. And if you don't do that, then doesn't matter how good I explain, doesn't matter how well you understand, it's not going to serve anything. So try to practice every day, try to create that consistency, have the discipline, have the dedication, and then use different resources. Use handwritten notes. Do that, okay? So please do that. Do you have any other questions, guys? Please share the feedback. And one other question, one other request, which is please put the comments after the class is ended. There are only 5 comments in our previous video which we have taken. So if you feel that I am doing something good, put a comment. Sure, that's what we will do. Once I teach React, we will create a project, wonderful projects around that. Okay, and there are a lot of things that we have not studied in that batch, Basu. So we will learn React in deep detail. How we are learning JavaScript. Similarly, with respect to this, we are going to learn our React as well. So please put your valuable, detailed feedback in your comment section later on. Share this video. Let people know about this. This playlist. I will give you an example. Recently, I saw one of the students, not my student, but someone else. They posted on LinkedIn, which is they posted like, okay, so this is the best resource of Java, according to me. So similarly, if you feel that this is one of the best resources of JavaScript there is, or HTML, CSS, or later on React, please let people know. Share these playlists on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or on other thing. Tag me there. So that will be what you can give me as fees, so that people will come to know about this channel. And I need subscribers now, right? Because we are working very hard for it. So that's something that we need. So please share, comment later on, and also, if possible, please put the share. What is it called? Put the comments as feedback later on in this video once this video is uploaded. Okay. So thank you so much, guys. Bye, everyone. Take care. And tomorrow we will have one of the most important sessions in entire JavaScript, which is asynchronous JavaScript. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Bye, everyone, and see you in the next class. Bye. Bye, guys. Bye, everyone. I will share that tomorrow. There will be a proper post related to that, Sayed. I will share that tomorrow and you have to join it. Please like this video right now and comment later on. Subscribe, share as well. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Have a great day ahead and see you in the next class. See you in the next class. Bye.